Welcome to Designed for the Creative Mind, a podcast for interior designers and creative entrepreneurs to run their business with purpose, efficiency, and passion. Because while every design is different, the process should remain the same. Prepare yourself for some good conversations with amazing guests, a dash of Jesus, and a touch of the woo-woo, and probably a swear word or two. If you're ready to stop trading your time for money and enjoy your interior design business, you are in the right place. I'm your host, Michelle Lynn. All right. Well, welcome back to the podcast, everyone. I am so excited to be here. I know I say that all the time, but this is like the best thing I've ever done is like the podcast because I get to meet really cool people. So today I am super excited to introduce you to Tanya Dalton. She's an author of On Purpose and The Joy of Missing Out. She's a speaker, a business coach for women entrepreneurs, and nationally recognized productivity expert. Basically, she's just a badass all around with a really fun personality. So welcome, Tanya. It's so good to meet you.
Thank you. It's so nice to meet you as well. Yes.
This is like, I started my podcast earlier this year and I kind of went into it like, I kind of need to do this. And this has turned out so great. I mean, I get to talk to all sorts of people and your books are just amazing. So
Thank you.
Can't wait to share it with the audience.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about it. I know exactly what you mean with the podcast, where it's one of those things where you're like, should I do it? Do I want to? I have my podcast, which we're now on episode 200 something of the podcast. And It's so fun because it gives you opportunities to meet people and to talk and connect. So I love it.
Yeah. And it's people that you want to talk to.
Yes, it is. That's what's nice because it's all on your terms.
Yes. And seriously, when I was reading your books, it was like, this woman understands me. Like we could sit down and have cocktails together.
Thank you. That means a lot because that's what I want readers to get out of my books. I want them to feel like I'm sitting on the couch next to them. That maybe I'm the friend who just gives you that little push that's like, you know what? You can have a better life. You can do better. And that's what I want that feeling to convey. So the fact that you felt that really means a lot to me.
Oh, for sure. In fact, I was reading both of them. So the first one is The Joy of Missing Out. And then the one that just came out, I guess, last week is called On Purpose. And it's the busy woman's guide to an extraordinary life of meaning and success. And as I was reading these, and then we'll dig into ask you some questions, but as I was reading these, one of the things I wanted to share with you is that like you so eloquently and succinctly wrapped up decades of like self-development seminars that I've gone to, like retreats and books that I've read, like Tony Robbins, Gabby Bernstein, Joe Dispenza, like all of this in just like this little field guide that I can pick up and put down and pick up and put down as needed for the rest of my life, just as a reminder.
I love that. Yeah. And I love all those people that you just mentioned. So that means a lot that you feel that way. I actually have people who, with The Joy of Missing Out, they said they use it almost like a magic 8-ball in the morning. Like they flip to a random page and then they read kind of what the message is that I talk about on that page. And the book wasn't written that way, but the fact that people use it that way, I think is so inspiring because they're like, I just feel like I get a little bit of you each day where it's like, all right, you can do this and here's how you're going to do it. Kind of a feel.
Oh, that's very cool. Yeah. It's like you said, it's like having a girlfriend that you can just pick up the phone and call.
Yes. Yeah. And that's what I love. I love really taking things that are really complicated, things that feel difficult and really breaking them down and making them really easy, really simple, because at the heart of it all, it's not rocket science. It's really not. A lot of these things that we talk about are things that we either know we should be doing or they're things that are so easy to implement. It becomes a no-brainer. Like, oh, I can totally do that. And I think that's the thing. It's really giving women the next step. It's, helping them understand that those actions they have to take they don't have to take them. They're going to want to take them because they're so easy and simple to do. It doesn't have to be reshifting or reorganizing your life to make it happen. I think that's the biggest mistake people have when it comes to productivity. They feel like there's this like magic system and it sits front and center. And then they're supposed to like wrap their life around that. Like they're supposed to bend and twist and contort themselves to fit the system. And I think that's all wrong. I think it's really about you and your priorities front and center. And then we create the system around you, around your strengths, around your weaknesses, making it really work for you.
Because everybody's so different, but we complicate
Yes.
things.
Oh, we do.
And then
we love to complicate things.
Yes,
we do.
The brain is just like, it gets in the way. In your On Purpose book, you were talking about perfectionism and then procrastination
Mm-hmm.
and then just like paralysis. And
Yes.
that kind of ties in with what you were just saying from your first book of getting things organized. It's just, and I'm dealing with individuals, women mostly, who are the same way with their business, with their life. It's like, if you can't do it perfect, they don't do it at all.
Yeah.
Dude.
Well, perfection becomes this mask that procrastination wears. We blame, it has to be a certain way, or I can't put it out in the world yet, when we should just say, you know what, this is how it is done, works. Right.
Yes.
And so we use perfectionism as a way to hold us back there's this little graph that I share in the book where it's like perfectionism leads to procrastination, which leads to paralysis. And that's when we feel stuck. And we believe that the opposite of stuck is unstuck. There's some kind of magical, the opposite of stuck is unstuck. The opposite of stuck is action. It's taking one small action, a tiny action, an itty bitty action, anything to get you moving forward. Because then once you do that, you get that momentum, you get that springboard behind you, and it becomes so much easier.
It's like working out. As soon as I get my shoes on, I'm okay. But getting my shoes on is sometimes harder than the actual workout. Yes.
Same thing with things like going to the dentist. Once you make the appointment, you're going to go. It's making the appointment.
Yes.
Right?
That's
anything
so true.
that we do, it's really the tiny steps that are really the incremental things that really make a difference. Laying your clothes out the night before, right? That's a tiny thing to do, but that gets you to get dressed for the next day.
All to get worked out.
Small wins
to get your workout
add up, and they end up being these like giant. This is how we accomplish big things, is through these tiny steps. It's not giant leaps. It's a multitude of tiny steps to get us to that giant leap.
I love that. And I generally say that perfection is perception. Like what's perfect for you isn't going to be perfect for me. So why are you trying to bust your ass getting it quote unquote perfect when really it's just an excuse to hide behind not doing anything? So I love that.
That's absolutely true.
So your book is called On Purpose. And like, what does it mean to live on purpose?
Yeah, I like that question because I feel like the word purpose has a lot of weight to it, doesn't it? It feels like, oh my gosh, when I decide what my purpose is, that's like now and forever. And it feels just really, really heavy, right? Yeah. No. And you have to say it in a deep voice. And the thing is living on purpose isn't about changing who you are. It's rising up to the best version of you. It's really living to something bigger than today. It's looking towards the horizon and seeing that there's a future with you in it, which is a big thing that we talk about in this book, that we have a hard time seeing ourselves in the future. But it's seeing ourselves in the future and living bigger than today, knowing and connecting the actions that you do right now, today, are connected to you in the future, a week down the road, 10 weeks down the road, 10 years down the road. All of that is really connected. So that's really what that whole idea of On Purpose is about. I started writing this book as a goal setting book, and I talk about this in the introduction. And when I really peel back the layers and I really took a look at it, life is not about goal setting. It's really not. Goals are the vehicle to get us to that life we want, to that dream life that we're looking for, whether that's, in business or in our personal life. It really is utilizing goals to get there, but goals are not the goal at all. It's really, what do I want out of life? And that's generally something tied to happiness, something that is tied to our joy. Yeah.
Well, and you had also mentioned, and I'm going to read something that really, really resonated with me. It said, what you wrote is, did you know that of all the emotions people try hardest to avoid is regret? We can handle anger, frustration, and resentment, but we will do just about anything to avoid regret. It's a powerful tool to understand because we can use it to get in touch with our future selves. And it hit me because I was at a Tony Robbins event, and what he said was, imagine meeting the person you could have become at the end of your life. What would you regret the most? Yes. And it was just such an interesting way to reframe it. And Tony, I'm not kidding you. At that point, I knew I was going to have to adopt my daughter. Like, I didn't know my daughter at the time, but I was like, what did I regret? It was like not being a mom. Like our goal was to have children, but we struggled with infertility for quite a while. And we just figured, okay, God doesn't have that in our path.
Right.
So you saying living on purpose, it's not just letting every day happen to you. It's like guiding the boat and beginning with the end in mind and giving yourself that grace. I like, it was just like, holy crap, that just smacked me across the face.
That's what I do occasionally. Give you a little smack across the face. I do it in a very loving way.
There's no bruises left.
We all need that though, because we tend to live our life on autopilot, or we have this false belief that this is just the way life is. And, talking about regret, what I think is so fascinating is when people die, their biggest regrets are not about the things that they did. It's not the mistakes. It's not the failures. It's the things they didn't do. The things that they didn't take the opportunity of doing. And so that's the thing that I think is really powerful is regret really does allow us to push up against it, to use that as a springboard. We'll do anything to avoid regret. We really will. So if we can understand that, and this is what I love about what I teach, it's really about understanding how your brain works. And then let's hack that. Let's make our brain work for us. When we understand,
let's talk about that.
This is how our brain works. It's so empowering.
Yes, because you had some very fascinating brain research in the book.
Oh yeah, I love. I'm such a nerd when it comes to
oh my gosh, yes, I'm a total geek. I love. And you broke it down so readily. Like I think it's just like you took it and you explained it in a manner that anybody can understand and really recognize. Let me interrupt myself to take a quick moment to thank Satinoff Insurance Agency for sponsoring this episode of the Designed for the Creative Mind podcast. Their support and understanding of the interior design, decorating, and home staging industries is unrivaled. Satinoff understands what our businesses do, and they provide insurance that lets me sleep at night. Yep, this is the firm that I use, and they will do the same for your sleep habits and your business too. They're more than an insurance agency, they're an extension of my business. They take care of the worry because they are the experts, which allows me and my team breathing room to do what we do best, design beautiful spaces. You can find their contact information below in the show notes. Give them a call today. So you were talking about how we all have a hard time investing in our future selves. So let's dive into that just a little bit.
I love talking about this because I think this is the thing. Again, when we understand how our brain works, it normalizes things for us. And we understand that, okay, there's not something wrong with me. This is how my brain works. So once I understand that, I can shift that. So there's incredible research, and there's a lot of research about how we see ourselves in the future and how we see ourselves as strangers. So one of my favorite studies is this fMRI study where they study how your brain, the different sections of your brain light up. And they ask participants about themselves, and these certain areas of their brain light up. Well, then they ask them about themselves in the future. Now, when we say in the future, we're not talking like 50 years. It can be 10 years. It can be 10 days. But when we speak about ourselves in the future, a different section of our brain lights up. But here's what's most interesting. When you talk about, and they had these participants talk about Natalie Portman and Matt Damon, when they spoke about these stars who are strangers to them, the same area of their brain would light up as what the area that would light up when they talked about themselves in the future. So in other words, to our brain, us in the future is not us. It's someone who looks and acts and talks like us, has the same name as us, but it's not really us. And this is why we have a hard time investing in ourselves today, because that person in the future who's going to benefit isn't me. So why not eat the cookie instead of the carrot? Why not splurge on the expensive pair of shoes instead of putting money into the 401k? Why worry about your marketing budget and instead go and do something else, right? We have a hard time because our brain
explains why I got into credit card debt when I was in my 20s.
Absolutely. It does. It
of course, I was
so many
too.
of those.
It's so amazing because we just don't recognize ourselves.
We don't. And I think that's really
so bizarre.
It's crazy, isn't it? And in fact, I give a follow-up study to it because I'm like, I know you don't believe me. I know that you're thinking this is not true. But I mean, there's numerous studies that show that this is how our brain works. And so again, when we understand that, we can, first of all, we can forgive ourselves. Oh, those mistakes I made in the past, the things that I did that I didn't invest in myself, I understand why I did that. Okay, I did that. Let's move on from that and let's move forward. Now that I know this, I can be more cognizant and I can really pay attention to how I'm thinking. So a lot of it is too, this idea of let's forgive ourselves for what we've done in our past. The first section of the book is about reflection. And I think it's really important because people don't want to reflect because it's painful. It's hard. It's difficult. It's one of those things that we'll do almost anything to avoid. We'd rather clean the cat's litter box than to think about the things we didn't like. But honestly, it's the things that we don't like in our past. That's the regret that we push against and we step into what we really do want. It's easier to see what we want based off of what we didn't like in our past. And so that's why I think it's incredibly powerful.
Absolutely. Because everybody can look back and think, oh, I should have done something differently. But then they assign themselves a worth based on that action. And if it's something that you can't, let me rephrase that. You can control it, but you have to give yourself the grace that it's your brain. And we're not our brain. We can totally turn around and take our mind and reprogram it. Oh, that, you know what would be interesting is like to write your future self a letter. Because I've written my past self a letter, but also it's like, hey, I know you in the future. Like, I know you are a badass.
Yes. And that's actually one of the ways you can start making those connections. You can start by writing yourself a letter. You can there's all kinds of filters on, all different kinds of apps where you can actually even project what you're going to look like when you're older. And you can post pictures of yourself older. You can,
that's cool.
Like let's say you're interested in running a marathon. You can find a picture of someone crossing a finish line and then just paste your picture on top of that, right? Your head on top of that. So you can see yourself, oh, there's me crossing the finish line. This is amazing thing that when our brain makes those connections, it's like, oh, we totally got this. We've got this.
Well, yes, because our brain doesn't know the difference between reality and imagination.
Really doesn't. Yeah.
Which is like, it's interesting because now that I have my daughter, she's 3 and she wants to go play with Coco Melon. Right. And it's because she doesn't know the difference between reality and make believe, but it's because our brain doesn't know, even though as we grow up, that's the beauty of a vision board.
Yes.
It's like,
and visualization.
This has already happened.
That's the thing is that's one of the ways that we can trick our brain into saying, oh, I can do this, because a lot of it really is the acknowledgement that this is possible. When we do that, we open up the doors, we open up the possibilities. And this is the thing. I mean, the book is called The Busy Woman's Guide to an Extraordinary Life of Meaning and Success. That's the subtitle to On Purpose, because that extraordinary life is absolutely possible. We can stop feeling like it's just an ordinary life. It's little tiny things that we do that make life extraordinary. And extraordinary and happiness is already there. It's already hidden in the cracks and the crevices of your everyday life. Yeah. It's choosing to see them. It's choosing how you want to view your world. A lot of it really does happen between our ears. Really does.
And it's true. You have to recognize the beauty and acknowledge it.
You do.
I love that. And so your book, you were talking about how the first part is written about reflection. And then I think the next one is kind of projection. And then so there's taking like who you are, what you want to do. And then you're talking about how to do it, like aligning your actions with who we are and where we want to go, which I love that because we're all different. And the book is so well written. It's not to you. It's not to me. It's not to Susie or Bobby. It's to anybody and everybody that will open their mind and their heart to taking this and understanding that you control your own life.
It is. It's at its heart. I like to say that the book is about the power of choice. Every chapter is about a choice. And so those sections we go through of reflection, projection, action, and alteration, all of those involve choosing, making choices, right? We start with reflection. We look backwards so that then we can move forward. Then we do projection. We decide, what is it I want? Projection answers that question of, what is it that I'm really looking for? What does my future look like with me in it? Then we get to action, which is how. I love all these like books that are out there that are like, rah, you can do it. And then you close the cover and you're like, okay, now what? I'm like, well, let's talk about how we're going to do this. Let's give you some action so that you feel empowered to take the steps to do this. So it's, how am I going to do this? And we talk about in the book about this whole idea that, we know the A to Z, but what's the B to Y? What's those in between steps to get us from where we are now to where we want to go? And so there's a lot of power in understanding how we're going to accomplish that. And then that last section is about alteration, because you know what? Life needs all of these flexibility. It needs grace because life is messy. There's going to be detours on your path that you did not anticipate. And that's a wonderful thing. Oftentimes it's the detours that get us to the life that we really want.
Yes. And you just have to roll with it, because like things don't happen to you. If you allow them, they happen for you.
Yes.
And you just take the reins and redirect as needed. And
absolutely.
Like, that's why I think this book is something that I'll personally be able to pick up again next year, and then again later. And almost like you said, with the 8 ball of the joy of missing out, it's just kind of like, what message do I need to have today?
Yeah.
So
and that's how I wrote the book. So it would feel timeless. It's, it's one of those things where, and each time you read the book, and this is what I've heard from people, because now the joy of missing out has been out for 2 years. They're like, I read it the first time and I loved it. And a lot of them then had their husbands read it, because they were like, this is, because really a lot of what we talk about applies for men. I like to say the book is written for women. And if men want to read it, they totally can, because it works for them. I just say they can twist and turn the words, just like we as women have done for thousands of years with all the literature that's written for men, because it works for them as well. But really, they're like, the second time I read it, I was in a totally different place and different things hit me. And then the third time I read, so I have these people who've read the book multiple times, and every time they read it, they're getting something different out of it, because you're in a different place in your life and you're ready for different things. Yeah. It's
so true. It is so very true. And I encourage our listeners to pick up the books, both of them actually, because they do go together almost seamlessly. Obviously, I mean, the same person wrote them, and it's coming from the same perspective. It's just addressing a little different.
I mean, they work independently of each other, but I also wanted people who loved the joy of missing out to feel like, okay, here's the next step in the puzzle. So you can certainly read them independent of each other, but they really are. They work really well together. They're like,
I love it. Because when we were first introduced, I went and purchased The Joy of Missing Out. And I was like, oh, look, I recognize the image that's on the front of it from, I was telling earlier, from Instagram. It was all over the place. And then your publisher or your somebody sent me the
my publicist.
Your publicist, yes, sent me the advanced copy of On Purpose. And so I was reading them very close together chronologically, and it just was an easy back and forth. So
yes, I love that.
So one thing I did want to ask you, kind of changing a little bit of a direction, because you took me by surprise when you were talking about SMART goals, because I've learned and I've taught how to set goals using the SMART format, SMART.
Yes.
Will you walk us through your, I think it's called impact goal framework?
Impact goals.
Because that really shifted my brain.
Yes. Well, and I've done the same thing for years. I taught SMART goals, but then I was finding that as I was teaching them, I was having to kind of bend them and twist them and really kind of make them work, which makes sense because SMART goals came about in the 1980s. And I think if we think about where we were in the 80s, let's not even talk about the fashion of the 80s, but let's talk about where we were in the 80s.
So true.
Very different from where we are now, especially just technologically, but just the way the world works is very different. And so I loved with SMART goals that it was a really easy, simple framework. I love that it was easy to remember because it's SMART. But I just felt like it needed an update. So it's a little homage to SMART goals as we move into impact goals. So impact goals stand for, so each letter, just like SMART, stands for something. Inspirational, measurable, purpose-driven, adaptable, challenging, and timed. So we'll just go through really quickly each one of those. Inspirational, it needs to inspire you. It needs to be tied to something you really want. We have to stop setting goals because we think this is what everybody else is doing. Well, I should lose 10 pounds because everybody else is doing that. I should do this for my business because this is what I see other people doing. Let's really do things that align with what we really want. And let's write them in positive ways. Not saying I'm going to quit smoking, but I am a non-smoker, right? Let's phrase things in a positive way, already seeing yourself that way in the future, right? Connecting that.
Yes, giving yourself that identity.
Yes. So that's the I, inspirational. M, measurable. So making sure that our goals can be measured. If our goals are too abstract, it's really hard to measure. And we talk in the book about how to really measure goals, because we don't want to get tied up in the numbers, but really looking a lot of times at, our frequency that we're doing these actions we're wanting to do. Like if it's healthy eating, measuring that by saying, I would like to make sure I'm making a healthy meal, an average of 3 times a week. Okay. That's a good way to start, because that word average gives us a little bit of wiggle room, right? Then we have P, which is purpose driven, which is what the book is all about. The whole book is about making sure this is tied to something much bigger than today. Then we have A, adaptable, making sure, again, we talked about that with that alteration, section of the book, that we need to have that flexibility built in so that we can adjust. One of the things I used to say is that goals were written in pen, plans were written in pencil. And I'm like, goals should be erased all the time. Sometimes they no longer work for us. So we need to adapt them and feel okay doing that. But we also want them to be C, challenging. We want to be pushed out of our comfort zone. So we talk about a few ideas of how you can make it adaptable while still making it challenging. And then that T is timed, having a deadline. When we don't have a deadline, we don't have anything to push against. And then that goal becomes just this never ending, someday I'll do this. So that
and someday sneaks up on you so quickly.
It does. It really does. So that's the impact system in a really, really quick form. We obviously go a lot more in depth in the book, but it's just, like I said, a refresh and an update on the SMART goals that really works for today's world.
Y'all, this podcast episode was made possible in part by Foyer, a lightning-fast interior design software that creates photorealistic renderings. I'm not kidding. You can barely tell that it's not a real room. So why leave your beautiful designs up to the imagination of your client when you can show them what their space is going to look like? You will sign more clients and get more approvals with this software. It's powered by artificial intelligence, and I'll vouch for its ease, because if I can do it, anybody can, because y'all know that my design team are the ones who do all the work. Find them in the show notes. So for those of you, I think I have a podcast about setting goals, and I use the SMART method. We all live and learn. This is a brand new, much more effective and driven way. I was just like, that's freaking genius. Like
Thank you.
It's all broken down, and it's much more intentional. Again, on purpose.
And that's the thing is, I always want to feel like I'm living my life, and the things I'm speaking about are tied to the things that I teach, that there is a bigger purpose to it. So when it came to, because honestly, when I first wrote the outline for the book, I wrote down that I was going to talk about SMART goals, because that's what I had taught. And so that's that whole idea too. Like, this is what I've always done. I've taught this a million times. I've got plenty of, trainings I could pull from to write this chapter. And then when I sat down, I was like, why am I doing what I've always done, when it's time for these to be updated, when it's time for these to be modernized, so to speak. And so then I just gave myself some space to really think about, what do I love from SMART goals? What really, like, timed, that works from SMART goals, right? All those, there's a lot of things that still work. It's just adjusting it so I'm no longer tweaking SMART goals. So now this works holistically. Yeah,
it's just improving on it. It's adding more ingredients to make a better cake.
Yes. I like that.
Well, and that's why I call my, so I have a paid program for interior designers, and it's called the Interior Design Business Bakery. And my copywriter and I she actually came up with it, because she's like, because you're always talking about cooking, and it always has to do with like baking something. It's like, well, it's a recipe, it's like running a business. There's a recipe. So,
and that's the great thing about recipes, is that you can adjust them so they really fit your taste. And I think that's the thing with the business. Running things on your terms is incredibly important. As a business owner myself, I've been an entrepreneur since 2008. I think that's one of the greatest things, is we have the power of choice in so many ways. And we forget that. We feel like we've painted ourselves into a corner. And then we forget to look up and realize there are no walls. We've never painted ourselves into a corner. As a business owner, there's lots of ways we can shift and change and grow. And it's never too late. It's never, it's never that, we've painted ourselves into a corner. I think that's one of the greatest things about being a business owner.
And I think that I've known in my heart that I have painted myself into a corner. And then you saying that there's no walls. It's so true. As I was reading these things, like I work too much. Like, I love to work. Love it.
I get that. Me too.
Yeah. And it's like one of those things where I need to give myself permission to not feel like I have to on the days that I don't feel it.
Yes.
Because I didn't go and adopt this lovely little child to spend all my time working and have her in daycare. It's like, no, it's my choice to stop working at a certain time and go spend time with her and play with her, and then if something's on a deadline, I can get to it later.
You can make it. And this is the thing for me. I mean, this goes back to that whole conversation we had about regret. I had a season with my business where I sell a physical product, and the product all arrived. I have a giant warehouse. It was jam-packed full of damaged products. None of them were sellable. I had to do we had to tear things apart and reassemble them. And it was a mess. I spent seven days a week, like 14-hour, 15, 16-hour days. My kids would come off the school bus and go straight to my office, to the warehouse. I mean, for several months, that was kind of the life we were living. And at the end of that year, I sat down and I did reflection, and I thought about, what did I regret? I felt like a terrible mom. I mean, I felt like a horrible mom. I had not spent nearly as much time really focusing on my kids. Everything was about the business. Everything was about that. And these are the things we want to avoid. We're like, I don't want to even think about how bad I feel as a mom. But that one thing, this is years ago, that one thing was what pushed me to then decide that I leave work every day at 3:00. I work Monday through Thursday. I no longer work Fridays. Fridays are a day off for me and my team. I leave work every day at 3:00 because of that regret, because of that season where I didn't love who I was as a mother. And I'm like you, I love to work. Like, I'm really passionate about what I do. And so it's easy to let work seep into all aspects of my life. But now I have that boundary for myself where it's like, I don't work after 3:00. Now, if I choose to work after 3:00, that's a choice I can make. I can choose, but that's not something I'm choosing often.
And you also had to go through and feel that pain to recognize the pleasure that you want to experience. Yes. So many people will look back and say, oh, I suck, and feel shame and regret, but at the same time, take the lesson that you need from the experience that you had.
The pain is the most fertile ground of all, because you're right. I could have just said, I'm the worst mom ever, and that's the end of the story, moving on. And instead I said, why am I the worst mom ever? Doing. Yeah. Why am I the worst mom ever? Well, because lots of reasons, but mainly because you were sitting all day at the office. Right. And so when I clarified that, that's the lesson I took. That's not how I want to mother. I get to choose how I mother. So now I make the choice of, I leave work at 3:00, Monday through Thursday.
Love it. Love it. I'm going to take my cue from that, because I'm working on the same thing. 3:00. We just put Genevieve into a different school. She gets off at 3:30. I don't want to keep her in after school care. So
I love it.
For those of you listening, this is my accountability.
I like that. It's setting boundaries for yourself. And a lot of times we talk about this in the joy of missing out. We have to communicate our boundaries to our clients, to our customers, to our friends, to our family, to ourselves. We have to communicate them to ourselves, write them down. I think that's
the hardest one.
Put it in your planner. It really is, because we'll play by the rules for everybody else. But when it comes to us, we're like, oh, it's fine. I'll just keep working. I'll keep doing. So it is about communicating those boundaries. And then when we do that, we feel better than ever. And then we're able to give our best selves to everyone around us. That's the best part. When we feel good, we are giving our best version of us to everybody else. And it's
ridiculous, because I can teach this until I'm blue in the face, but it really is hard for me to implement it sometimes. And it goes back to that future self person. Like, damn it, Michelle, like a year from now, Michelle, I need to talk to you.
The year from you, Michelle, needs to have a conversation with you about
exactly.
And that's the thing is you can have a year from you, Michelle, write the letter to you now, right? Yeah. That's another way to look at that letter writing.
Oh, girl, I've got some work to do as soon as we stop recording.
I love it.
I got some work. All right. So I love to talk all things business and development related. I could sit here and talk to you for another hour, like easily.
Yeah.
Actually, like multiple hours. But we're going to move into this next segment. It's just rapid fire Q&A. And it's just a very simple format to get to know you a little bit better, so the audience can hear more about you as a person, in addition to the author and the entrepreneur. So nothing's off the table.
Okay. Oh boy.
Let's see what questions come up today.
Ooh, let me take a deep breath.
All right. So we'll start off softball. Coffee or tea?
Tea. I don't drink coffee.
Oh,
At all.
Okay.
Never have.
Well,
I know. It's
that's
very
amazing.
controversial.
I don't know how to respond to that.
Most people don't. It's like I just said, I have 3 heads, but I'm a tea drinker.
What kind of tea do you drink?
I love a chai tea, especially a chai tea latte in the morning.
Oh my God.
That's kind of my coffee replacement.
Love
any sort of tea I love.
Gotcha. I've tried, haven't been able to stick with it. Okay. Last movie you watched.
Oh, I watched a documentary on Val Kilmer the other day, which was fascinating. I thought it would be really vapid, like kind of self-absorbed. It was really fascinating. I watched the trailer and was like, oh, this is going to be very different. So I just watched that.
Interesting. Oh, note to self. How many siblings do you have?
2. Brother
Favorite ice cream flavor?
Oh, chocolate and peanut butter, if I can get that, especially as a milkshake.
I'm getting hungry.
All about that.
When was the last time you laughed until you peed yourself?
Oh my gosh, probably last week. I have 2 kids, so there's not a lot of, control everything sometimes. Yeah. But I love to laugh. I think that we should laugh every single day as business owners. I mean, my office, we're always laughing, me and my team, because if you don't laugh, sometimes you're going to cry. So
exactly. Or you're going to punch somebody in the throat.
Maybe both.
Yes. Yeah. We joke about that too. It's like we take our business seriously, but we don't take ourselves seriously.
Yes. I absolutely agree with that philosophy.
It gives you so much more freedom to be the dork that I am.
Yeah. And that's the thing is I went into business for myself so I could be me. And so why not be who I am with my team, with my family, with just be yourself.
So much easier than being somebody else.
Oh my gosh, it wears me out, right?
Yes, exhausting. When you were little, what did you want to be when you were growing up?
A teacher. And I was a teacher for a while. That's how I started off life, as a teacher.
As a teacher, boy,
elementary school teacher.
God bless you.
I know. God bless past me. I'm like, I don't know how I did that.
Survive that one. What's your favorite form of exercise?
Pilates.
When was the last time you took a nap?
Yesterday. I take a nap every day.
Yes, we could be good
people.
Friends.
I mean, that is probably one of the biggest secrets to productivity, taking a nap and doing it guilt-free.
Is it a 10-minute power nap, a 30-minute nap, a 2-hour nap?
I call it's a 26er. I call it a 26er. It's actually based off of NASA that has done all this research into sleep. And if you do 26 minutes of sleeping, it's enough to go deep into your REM and come back out. And you wake up refreshed, not tired. So I set my timer for 26 minutes. I go lay down. It's perfect. Yeah.
And you fall asleep pretty quickly.
I do, but even if I don't totally fall asleep, I put myself in kind of that restful mode, and it's amazing. Yeah.
I'm writing that down because
26
I'm
minutes.
a big fan of naps.
Yeah, I am too. Yeah. I'm a big advocate for napping.
It's beautiful. When I had a brick and mortar studio, my team would laugh at me because I just go sit on the couch. I'd close the windows. And I'm like, I'll be with you in a little bit. What are you doing, Michelle? I'm taking a nap.
Naps are underrated.
I'm right there with you. So what is your favorite color?
Green, but I love all colors.
I could imagine that. Introvert or extrovert?
Extrovert.
Cake or pie?
Cake. But I do love a good pie. I'm like anything dessert. Yeah. I have a hard time saying no to any of that.
Exactly. Sweet and like is good. Okay. Last question, because we've had so much fun talking. I'd like to honor my audience's time. Last question is, if you could have dinner with anybody, who would be the one person you would invite?
Oh, that is a tough question because there's like a whole bank of people. Yeah. But honestly, now knowing what I know now, I probably would invite my grandfather because he's been passed for years. And he died like he lived. He lived very on purpose. And even his passing was very, very purposeful and very, so just having a conversation with him now as an adult, knowing what I know now, I think would be incredibly powerful. I would absolutely love that.
How neat. I'm sure he would really enjoy that as well. Just seeing the person that you've grown into. Sounds like it's in your blood.
Yes, it is. It is.
Oh, Tanya, I have really enjoyed this question. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too.
Thank you for being here. I know our audience has loved everything you shared. Will you let them know how or where they can connect with you? please.
Yes. So the best place to really find me is tanyadalton.com. You can find links to my books there. Both the books, I have links to that. I also have links to my podcast, The Intentional Advantage. And there's all kinds of information about me there. So tanyadalton.com is the best place to find me. You'll also find links to me on Instagram and those kinds of places. But that's kind of my hub.
Awesome. And I will have all of that in the show notes so that our audience can just cruise on over there and find all of that. In case you're driving, don't stop to write this down.
That's right. That's right.
I've got you covered, babe. Got you covered. Okay. So for those of you who can benefit from even more resources surrounding the business of running your interior design business, join my growing community on my Facebook's Maybe I should have had more coffee. On my Facebook's private group, it's called the Interior Designers Business Launchpad. I hop in there once a week and spend 10, 15 minutes just giving you guys some mini trainings. And then, of course, if you're listening to this podcast and you like what you're hearing, please leave a review. It definitely helps us find more search relevancy. If you don't like what you're hearing, you can email me directly. So until next time. Yeah, exactly. Thanks again, Tanya.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Hey, y'all. If you love the show and find it useful, I would really appreciate it if you would share with your friends and followers. And if you like what you're hearing, want to put a face with a name, and get even more business advice, then join me in my Facebook group, the Interior Designers Business Launchpad. Yeah, I know, it's Facebook. But just come on in for the training and then leave without scrolling your feed. It's fun. I promise you'll enjoy it. And finally, I hear it's good for business to get ratings on your podcasts. So please drop yours on whatever platform you use to listen to this. We're all about community over competition. So let's work on elevating our industry one designer at a time. See you next time.